Barnes on the 5. This is a Fox News alert. Welcome to Hannity. Tonight, a major update in the Hannity investigation into the left's massive double standard on election interference. We have Newt Gingrich, Jay Sekulow, Monica Crowley will all be here with reaction. But first, finally, the political left, the Destroy Trump media, are waking up to what we have been telling you now for months. Now, we are forcing them to cover stories that they have been ignoring. Now, that is tonight's very important opening monologue. Now, if you watch this program, you know that unlike the Destroy Trump media, the establishment media, they're all groupthink and think alike every day. We think the truth is important and that you, the American people, you deserve to know what's really going on. And for weeks, we have been covering massive scandals, and we've been calling on the media, on Congress, to start investigating them. For example, there's this explosive report. Remember Politico back in January? Look at the headline we've been telling you about. Ukrainian efforts to sabotage Trump backfire. Kiev officials are scrambling to make amends with the president-elect after quietly working to boost Clinton. Now, the scandal revolves around a one-time DNC operative named Alexandra Chalupa. She, along with Ukrainian government officials, worked during the campaign to hurt Donald Trump and help Hillary Clinton. It's in the Politico article. Just read it. Now, we put together a chart to better illustrate what has happened. According to Politico, Chalupa, who's a former Clinton White House employee, worked for years to try and expose former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort. Now, this includes by meeting with Ukrainian diplomats at the Ukrainian embassy, and Chalupa said that those Ukrainian diplomats were, quote, helpful when it came to finding information. Then there's this damaging quote about Chalupa in the article. She occasionally shared her findings with officials from the DNC and Clinton's campaign. So, from what Politico reported back in January, Chalupa tried to share information with the DNC and Hillary Clinton's. Oh, sounds like collusion. Now, we did once again. We reached out to this DNC operative for comment. We've yet to hear back. Now, Chalupa did provide a statement to fake news CNN. Here's part of it. During the 2016 U.S. election, I was a consultant for the DNC running an ethnic engagement program. I was not an opposition researcher for the DNC, and the DNC never asked me to go to the Ukrainian embassy to collect information. By the way, during a period of time, she made $412,000, according to Politico. Chalupa did admit that she did meet with the Ukrainian officials at the Ukrainian embassy, but now claims 6 months later that the topic had nothing to do with the election. Okay. Now, denial aside, now 6 months after this article comes out, there are so many questions that we need answers to, and our continued coverage on this scandal is now starting to get the attention of the Destroy Trump media and Democrats. And yesterday, even Congressman Adam Schiff was asked, finally, about Ukrainian election collusion. Take a look.
I understand Hillary Clinton lost. This effort was not as elaborate as the Russian effort, but was it acceptable, or would it have been acceptable for the Democrats to accept help from the Ukrainian government in this campaign?
No, it would be appropriate for the Democrats to accept help from the Ukrainian government. But I think if you look at the Politico article, and we're talking about just a single article here, if you accept all the facts in the article, the scale of what the Russians did is not comparable to anything in that article. It would be problematic to get any kind of support from a foreign government. But again, I think to compare the two is a bit like comparing bank robbery with writing a check with insufficient funds. Both appropriate money from the bank improperly, but a very different degree of seriousness and involvement, in this case, by a foreign government.
Not comparable. It's far worse. And President Trump's attorney, Jay Sekulow, who will join us later tonight, was also bringing up, finally this weekend, this very important issue on the Sunday shows. Take a look at this.
Opposition research in campaigns happens all the time. You had the situation with the Ukrainians doing the same thing with the Democratic National Committee in the Clinton campaign. We know for a fact, as were reported extensively in an investigative journalist piece by Politico, that the Ukrainians were in direct contact with DNC officials and traded information back and forth. The fact is, you know, the Ukrainians at the very same time were working with the DNC and the Clinton campaign to give what? Opposition research on Donald Trump and his associates. But I go back to the Ukrainian example. I know you don't want to discuss it because you say it's not being investigated, which raises a question. But here, in the Ukrainian situation, they actually exchanged documents from a foreign government.
So finally, we got the establishment media to start talking about Ukraine interfering in our election. Now, we still need more answers from the people who headed the organizations that were involved. That includes Debbie Wasserman Schultz. She was the head of the DNC. She needs to be put under oath and testify before Congress about what she knew when she knew it. And the same goes for former Clinton campaign officials like John Podesta, because that DNC operative testified that she tried to share information with both the DNC and the Clinton campaign. Also, former Clinton campaign manager Robbie Mook. He should be seated right next to Podesta under oath to tell you, the American people, what he knows. This is a serious issue, far worse than anything Trump-Russia. And, you know, going off my facts, in my opinion, it is worse than the black helicopter, tinfoil hat conspiracy theories you've been hearing about for 11 months. And with Ukraine, we have real evidence of collusion. We know real information was passed along and may have ended up in the DNC and Clinton campaign. We know that it did impact the election because Paul Manafort ended up resigning as Trump's campaign manager and chairman. All that evidence is why we are not going to stop covering this story until you, the American people, get the answers that you deserve. Also, another massive scandal that the media, establishment media, has not paid much attention to, and Congress needs to start investigating. And I'm talking about that Uranium One deal that we've been calling the real Russia conspiracy theory. As Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton signed off giving up to 20% of America's uranium, the foundational material for nuclear weapons, to who? Vladimir Putin, to Russia, the Russians. And while that was going on, people involved in that deal kicked back over $145 million to the Clinton Foundation. Bill Clinton doubled his speaking fees in Moscow. Doesn't that sound like something the establishment media, congressional investigators, Robert Mueller should be focused on, at least beginning to look into? Then there's the fake news dossier. Remember the op research firm Fusion GPS that has ties to the Hillary campaign, the Democratic Party, Planned Parenthood? Well, according to those reports, that phony dossier quoting Russians and the Ritz-Carlton and hookers was originally commissioned, okay, by a Republican donor, but eventually a Clinton ally ended up funding it. Christopher Steele, the former MI6 agent, put this disgusting hit piece together, cited Russian government sources or sources tied to the Russian government. Doesn't that sound like colluding with a foreign government to interfere with an election to you? Then there's the law firm that has ties to both Fusion GPS, the Russian lawyer who was in that June 2016 meeting with Donald Trump Jr. What's disgusting about all this, the Democrats feigning moral outrage about the idea of Russia collusion were perfectly willing to repeat information from that phony Christopher Steele dossier that used Russian sources in some cases. Well, doesn't that make Democrats complicit in this? Well, we'll let you decide. Take a look at what they were saying at about this phony dossier, which is proven false, citing Russians. Take a look.
Do you believe anything about that dossier?
Oh, I think it should be taken a look at. I think they should really read it, understand it, analyze it, and determine what may not be fact. We already know that the part about the coverage that they have on him with sex actions is supposed to be true. They've said that that's absolutely true.
I want to take a moment to turn to the Christopher Steele dossier, which was first mentioned in the media just before the election and published in full by media outlets in January. My focus today is to explore how many claims within Steele's dossier are looking more and more likely as though they are accurate. Well, the dossier definitely seems right on these points. A quid pro quo relationship seems to exist between the Trump campaign and Putin's Russia.
There is a lot in the dossier that is yet to be proven, but increasingly, as we'll hear throughout the day, allegations are checking out.
All three of these issues, Ukrainian collusion, the Uranium One deal, the fake news dossier, all involve actual concrete evidence, real collusion, real wrongdoing, real law breaking. Now, it's why we're not going to stop reporting. We're not going to stop covering these very important issues on the show. And we will demand the media do their job. The establishment media, MSNBC, CNN, fake news, 24/7, the same opinion all day. That's not the same here on the Fox News channel. Joining us now, author of the #1 New York Times bestseller, 7 weeks in a row on the list, Understanding Trump, former Speaker of the House, Fox News contributor, Newt Gingrich. So we've been trying to get an answer from this Chalupa lady. The article was written back in January. We have quotes from her in there. Doesn't deny it until tonight to CNN. I want her, Wasserman Schultz, Podesta, Mook, and Hillary under oath.
Well, and even in the story tonight, there are other people who are saying that she had told them that she thought she could get material that would hurt Trump. So even her denial, I think, may in fact not hold up when people look into it in more detail. But it's interesting, you know, there's this huge shock in the elite media that this Russian lawyer came to Trump Tower, etc. Well, there's not shock that this DNC operative went to the Ukrainian embassy. Oh, no, that's not really a problem because of this and that and the next thing. The double standard is so gigantic that it is, I think, to the average American, very obvious that it is a double standard. And again, notice the difference. We don't have any evidence that anything was done to collude. This is the key word. Where's the collusion? Where's the Russians working directly with Trump? There's no evidence. Furthermore, as several liberal lawyers have said, Harvard professors of law, under the First Amendment, you are allowed, with your free speech rights, to try to learn whether or not your opponent has a weakness, as long as you're not
Alan
stealing
Dershowitz.
anything. There's no
Jonathan
evidence.
Turley.
You know, and he's saying, and both of them are saying, to try to turn this into a criminal case would be a direct assault on the First Amendment right of free speech in a campaign. And I think that the degree to which the elite media has tried to puff this up is just almost unbelievable.
So you have the Ukraine issue where a real meeting took place with a real DNC worker, operative, whatever position she wants to say that she had, saying in the Politico that, in fact, information was passed on that had an impact on the election. We have the corrupt uranium one deal. I won't give the details. Everyone in this audience knows them. And then you have this phony dossier citing Russians, Fusion GPS, Democrats all hooked into them and paying money to this guy. Comey even wanted to pay this guy $50,000, and it was citing Russian sources with bad information. Why aren't the Republicans putting as much emphasis on this and saying, okay, if you're against outside countries influencing our elections, then we've got to investigate these issues?
Well, they should be. And as I said before in talking with you, I do think there's a very real grounds for the Congress to look at the totality of foreign influence peddling, foreign campaign influence, not just Russia, not just Ukraine, but as we have become the most powerful nation in the world, there are a lot of people around the planet who give grants to universities to shape what they're doing, who give grants to individuals, who hire lobbyists. You can use this New York Times, Washington Post hysterical language to describe anything. But the one that I think is the most intriguing, now that you've put your finger on, and I cannot understand why the Congress has not dug into it, is the scale of secrecy involved in the uranium deal. The fact that apparently there's this Canadian foundation which has to disclose what it does with its money or where its money comes from. As you pointed out, it gave millions and millions to the Clinton Foundation
145
at a time when the secretary could have stopped it. I mean, the fact that that hasn't been investigated strikes me as just almost unbelievable.
It's breathtaking. It's as bad or worse in our enemy as the Democrats keep telling us. You were kind enough to point something out to me today in a private conversation we had about two reporters writing a book called Shattered, meaning that they expected Hillary to win, shatter the glass ceiling. Didn't exactly work out the way they wanted, but there's an interesting Russia side note to this. I'll let you explain.
Well, there really is, and it's a fascinating book. Anybody who's interested in politics, these two reporters had gotten, obviously in advance, to write a book about the election of Hillary Clinton. Suddenly, election night, like everybody else, they're faced with having to write a different book. So instead of having shattered the glass ceiling, it became how Hillary Clinton shattered her own campaign. And towards the end of the book, there's a whole section. I'm thinking about writing one of my newsletters on this. There's a whole section where Hillary, the day after the election, suddenly figures out, since it can't be her fault, the close events and the Russians.
It's the Russians' fault. Russia made me do it.
So, and then she began talking about it had to be the Russians. Okay.
We'll cut more with Newt Gingrich right after the break. When we come back, I have my own list for the Republican Party. If they want to be successful in 2018, 4 to 5 things they need to do. We'll ask Newt what he thinks they need to get done. Then later, President Trump's attorney, Jay Sekulow, will react to the media finally being forced to ask questions on these issues we're talking about, including Ukrainian collusion, and also tonight.
He's nothing but a con artist and a liar, and he's not a businessman.
Anti-Trump protests taking place across the country this weekend. Our cameras were there, and in a mini monologue tonight, I will expose how deep and psychotic this Trump hate has become. All that, and conservative political commentator Tomi Lahren gets the final word on the program tonight as we continue on this busy breaking Monday news edition.
For decades, Washington has allowed other nations to wipe out millions of American jobs through unfair trade practices. Wait till you see what's up. You are going to be so happy. We will protect our workers, promote our industry, and be proud of our history because we will put America first.
That was the president earlier today at the White House during a Made in America showcase of companies and products from all across this great country of ours. And if GOP lawmakers who beg to be elected, if they want to be successful in 2018, 4 key things they better get moving with some sense of urgency and accomplish by November of next year. I would say by the end of this year. They need to have completed, show they mean they're going to secure the border. At least 300 miles of the border wall need to be built. They also have to finance it and have a plan in place for the rest of the wall to be built. Second, Obamacare. I understand Senator McCain's sick. When he gets back, it needs to be repealed, replaced immediately. Third, there needs to be an energy revolution, as Secretary Rick Perry said today, so we create millions of high-paying career jobs in this country. And fourth, we better get that middle class, that corporate tax cut, that multinational corporation repatriation for these companies to invest in America and build factories and manufacturing centers. They don't get that done, they won't deserve re-election, in my opinion. We continue. Former Speaker of the House, Fox News contributor, author of the best-selling book, Understanding Trump. Mr. Speaker, those are the add Neil Gorsuch, and you got 5. The president handled the originalist. I would argue if those 4 things are not done, that there is a very strong possibility 2018 could be a shock election for the country. Not good for the Republicans.
Well, I think that's right. I think that the left clearly is going to turn out. The left hates Trump. They'll do anything they can to beat him. And the question is, 1, can we have enough energy and drive among our base that they turn out? And 2, can we perform well enough that independents decide that they want to reelect us? And I think this comes down, in a sense, to your list, but also to a deeper sense of, do we represent prosperity, economic growth, higher take-home pay, more jobs, or not? Trump, you just had him, the president, a minute ago, talking about what he wants to do to make America great again. I think that he's in the right general direction. I personally believe they ought to do as much as they can on health care right now, but they shouldn't spend the whole rest of this year on one issue. They have also got to pass, I think, by Thanksgiving and get signed into law by Thanksgiving, a very large tax cut, retroactively designed back to January 1, to make sure that we have enough economic growth in 2018 that Republicans can run as the party of prosperity, of jobs, of higher take-home pay, and of economic growth. And I would say the highest focus ought to be on getting the tax bill through, because if we don't have economic growth next year, I think we're in real danger of having Speaker Nancy Pelosi in 2019. If we do get enough economic growth, I think, frankly, we'll probably get reelected.
And I think that's where the millions of energy jobs come into play. I think that's where you're right. I love the tax cuts being retroactive. That'll flood the economy with money and investment opportunities, factories, manufacturing centers, the things we talk about. But I'll take a first step on health care. I'll take health savings accounts opportunities, getting rid of the taxes associated with it. I'll take the opportunity for cooperatives and then getting it better, or just repeal it. If that's all they can do for now, do it. How important, why are you, look, we've been friends for 25 years. I was there emceeing the night you became the Speaker of the House. That's how far we go back, even further. My first interview, I think it was in 1990 with you. And here's my question. You have been urging me to be patient.
You were a mere child.
Because you have been urging me to be patient. I'm run out of patience with these Republicans. They asked for this opportunity.
I agree. I agree. I surrender. We've had 6 months of patience. It's time to perform. And I agree with you. I think that they have to go to, first of all, you've had 6 months to look at what happened, what worked, what didn't. It's like a football team at half in the middle of, you got to take steps, you have to learn lessons. I think they've got to figure out how to do things faster, more simply. I like what you just said, frankly, about health care. If you can't pass the gigantic bill, tell me what you can pass. But get something done that starts to move us away from Obamacare. And I think on each of these things, whether it's infrastructure or it's controlling spending or it's reforming the bureaucracy, and by the way, the Veterans Administration is a great success story. I think it ranks second only to conservative judges in terms of how the president is starting to really move the country. Deregulation, big success, moving in the right direction. I met last Thursday with Secretary Brzezinski of Interior. He has got a great plan, moving in the right direction. Former commander of SEAL Team 6, bringing that kind of tough military approach to it. I see things moving in the right direction. But the Congress has got to pick doable things that they can actually get done and not just beat their head against a wall without getting anything done. So I'm on your side now.
Okay, it just took you a little longer because you are a more patient person. I'll cede that point back to you. But I will say this. I hope they just heard what you said. They don't get it done. They put their own power in jeopardy. You know, keeping your promises is good politics. Mr. Speaker, good to see you. Thank you. Congrats on the book. When we come back, President Trump's attorney, Jay Sekulow, weighs in. He'll respond to the media finally being forced to talk about the issues we're discussing. Ukrainian election interference, for example, and the phony dossier, and then, of course, the Uranium One deal, and also tonight.
Trump, without a question, is more dangerous than Hitler. He has a greater arsenal. He is nuclear armed. He is the head of a sole superpower.
All right, several anti-Trump protests this weekend. Our cameras were there. We have our special Hannity investigation coming up and a mini monologue and get reaction from conservative columnist, our friend Monica Crowley, and all of that. Our friend, political commentator, conservative Tommy Lahren gets the final word every night of the program this week. So please stay with us. Welcome back to Hannity. So yesterday during an interview, ranking member of the House Intelligence Committee, Democrat Congressman Adam Schiff, said it would be, quote, problematic if Democrats, in fact, colluded with Ukraine during the election. But, of course, he tried to downplay the comparison when talking about possible Russia collusion. Here with reaction, one of President Trump's attorneys, he's the chief counsel for the American Center for Law and Justice, Jay Sekulow. What's fascinating about this, and by the way, you did the 5 Sunday shows. You have my sympathies, appreciation, and apologies. I don't think anybody should have to suffer through all.
Oh, it was great. It was like arguing a Supreme Court case every 15 minutes. It was fine.
Every 15 minutes, you do it in rapid succession. People don't know that. All right, so you did the 5 Sunday shows. Yeah. You were able, I think, in 4 of the 5, you brought up the Ukrainian issue, which there's far more evidence of, and even now Adam Schiff is forced to cover it because it's worse, isn't it, than anything that has been alleged about Trump.
Well, what does it establish? I mean, this is what I've been arguing on the Sunday shows and what I've been talking about for a week. So you have this transaction going on with the Ukrainians and the operatives from the DNC. It was a major report in Politico, and now, 6 months later, they've got these tepid denials. But 6 months ago when it came out, not so much, right? So the president today, this morning, sends out a statement on Twitter that political campaigns would have taken opposition research. Well, political campaigns do take opposition research. And there's a perfect example of it. I mean, and not only was it opposition research, but there were setups regarding media questions to be asked to go after the Republican nominee for president, Donald Trump, to go after his political campaign operation. So when you look at what was actually going on, it's much deeper, right?
And Chalupa finally, it wasn't today, it was Friday. She gives this statement to CNN. She won't respond to us. But otherwise, she lets the article go the whole time. From what I've seen, I've saw no other quotes from her. We're begging her to come on this program. And then you got the Uranium One deal. Then you got the phony dossier where Fusion GPS funding this thing. And it cites Russian operatives with false information. In all of these cases, I can make a strong argument of Russia-Democrat collusion, helping Hillary Clinton collusion. Can you?
Well, I mean, you look at the Fusion GPS situation. I mean, there you have, and this is, you've covered this, but most outlets are ignoring this. The individual that was involved in the meeting with Donald Trump Jr., the lawyer from Russia, worked with Fusion GPS and the law firm that was affiliated with it on various matters, including the whole Brzezinski Act. And remember, when it was discussed about that the substance of the meeting was about adoption, that was in fact what the substance of the meeting ended up being about. So the reality is they may have said it was going to be opposition research, but it ends up being this Brzezinski Act and the whole issue of Russian adoption, which wasn't even a campaign issue. But take it a step further. Where does draw the lines here? It's not very difficult to see what this is. Everybody's ignoring the fact that this is, politics is a rough and tumble sport. That's the nature of living in a constitutional republic. So for all this, angst that's going on right now, look at what really happens in the real world, and you see this kind of joust going on all the time. Yep.
Look, I expect the establishment to no expectations. They're 24 hours a day. It's the same nonsense. And it's only we're forcing this story because the facts are so damning. But now they've opened up the door. Now we've got the dossier. Now you got Ukraine. And now the Uranium One deal are more important than ever before if they really care about the truth, if they really care about other countries' outside influence of our elections. So where are the Republicans demanding and setting up hearings, subpoenas, asking these people questions under oath?
Well, here's the reality. Those issues, as you just laid them out, should be part of what's going on in not only in the political discussion, but in the political world we actually live in. So here's what you've got. You've got political operatives that are, operating in the world as they'd like it to be rather than the world as it is. And facts are facts. And, in the law, when the facts are bad, you argue the law. When the law's bad, you argue the facts. I mean, there's all these adages. But here's the reality. When you look at the facts here of what you've just outlined, and which's been on the record for over 6 months now, ask yourself why it's not getting the right coverage or why it's not getting coverage. And here's what it is. As on so many issues, it doesn't fit into the narrative. It doesn't fit into the real narrative. You could go back and look at what was going on during the Iran negotiations, the so-called negotiations with Iran and this, reset with the Russians, all of these issues. It doesn't fit into a narrative, therefore it's not covered. Fortunately, you're covering it. But the reality is that if it doesn't fit into a particular narrative of the media, and look, I did, as you said, Sean, I did 5 of them yesterday. And it was amazing to me to see both the inconsistency and the consistency of what they're trying to get you to say versus what you're actually saying and what's the real issue. So what are the real issues here? Are the American people seeing through and understanding that facts are facts? And you know what? I think the American people really do get it much more than what goes on inside the Beltway.
I'm glad to see that the alt-left media, the destroy Trump establishment media, that now is going to have to deal with these issues whether they want to or not. That's a little progress. We're going to keep pounding it till they get it right. Jay Sekulow, thank you for being with us. And up next on this busy breaking Monday news edition of Hannity.
He's nothing but a con artist and a liar, and he's not a businessman.
All right, this past weekend, liberal anti-Trump protesters gathered in multiple cities across the country. Most don't even know why they were protesting, and we have the proof. And the turnout is pretty small. I've got a mini monologue for them and the establishment media. Monica Crowley joins us, and also tonight.
Let's make the GOP work again. And yes, let's absolutely start with the border wall. For every hour our Republican representatives sit around and talk about this, thousands more illegal immigrants and who knows what else pour into our country.
Conservative political commentator Tomi Lahren gets the final word every night this week, and that and more as Hannity continues straight ahead. Welcome Welcome back to Hannity's. Over the weekend, so-called anti-fascist activists organized what they hope would be huge and massive, widespread anti-Trump organizations all across the country. So, how did the protests go down? Well, and just why are so many of these liberals just so angry at President Trump? Well, we decided to send our cameras all across the country to find out the source of this deep-rooted Trump hate. And that is the subject of tonight's mini monologue. All right, so the mainstream alt-left establishment media goes on and on about how unpopular President Trump is with you, the American people. But this weekend's protests tell a very different story. Small, sparsely attended rallies across some of America's most liberal cities barely garnered news coverage. Now, those in attendance, they seem to be protesting a variety of issues that they attributed to the election of President Trump. And, of course, the anti-Trump hysteria is being pushed by CNN, MSNBC, and other fake news outlets. It was all front and center. In case you had better things to do with your weekend, which I imagine you probably did, rather than march around with a sign and mindlessly chant rhyming slogans, well, you're going to want to take a look at what went down at Saturday's sad anti-fascism rallies and the failure that they were. Watch these protesters from New York, Chicago, Seattle. Take a look.
The cruel and brutal future of the Trump-Pence regime. They must go. They must go.
Trump, without a question, is more dangerous than Hitler. He's putting people in danger.
We have to organize because our lives are at stake.
I'd like to see him drag kicking and screaming out of the White House.
The only way we're going to get through this is if we resist him. Trump and Pence are completely illegitimate.
If you look at the analytics, statistical analytics, impossible that he won Florida.
He's nothing but a con artist and a liar, and he's not a businessman.
I'm deeply concerned about the Russian involvement.
I'm just so upset because of this whole stupid thing about handshakes.
When I saw Trump get reelected, I knew we were going to lose ground in the fight against AIDS.
With the French president's wife and holding on to people's hands for too long.
The disrespect for people, the party before people, just, I don't know, Fanny, help me out here. What's wrong with Trump?
He demonizes Muslims. He demonizes immigrants. Those are common things that under Hitler and fascism, that they demonize the Jewish people.
And I think the lawyers and the journalists are going to save us.
Woodstock revisited. Let's go back to the old days. Now, why were they so small, so disjointed? Why do these protests even matter to you? Well, let me tell you why. Maybe the establishment media, 24/7, NBC, CNN, maybe they have it wrong yet again with more fake news. Perhaps most people in this country, the people that get up every day and work hard and play by the rules and pay their taxes, maybe they don't really care about this phony, made-up Russia collusion conspiracy theory that they've been shoving down your throat for the last, 11 months. Maybe the people in poverty, 50 million, the people on food stamps, 50 million, the 94 million out of the labor force, the worst recovery since the 40s, lowest home ownership rate in 51 years. Maybe Americans care about that, the great people that get up every day and make this country great. Maybe they're really hoping, the forgotten men and women of this country are actually hoping that President Trump and his agenda work and get the country back on track again, and the country becomes great again. They don't care about these stupid signs, slogans. Coming up, Monica Crowley reacts to this monologue on Trump hate, and later tonight, conservative political commentator Tomi Lahren, she'll have the final word each and every night this week, and she'll be on The Specialist later this week, right here tonight on Hannity.
Each year,
he has no interest in the Constitution. He has no interest in the job. He has no interest in the people. He wants to make money, and he knows that he can make money wheeling and dealing, which is why he's more interested in Vladimir Putin and Russian oligarchs than he is in governing. He doesn't know anything about the real problems in this country.
All right, that was more from the weekend's anti-Trump protest. Joining us with reaction to this weekend's events and much more, conservative commentator Monica Crowley. There's one lady, we actually showed this on Saturday, said Trump is worse than Hitler. That's how crazy they are. Worse than Hitler.
Yeah,
Not even Hitler.
You know, Sean, the protesters in the 1960s actually had real cause, right? Civil rights, Vietnam. These protesters are motivated by nothing except a personal hatred for Donald Trump. And when they're asked specifically, what is it about Donald Trump? What is it about his agenda? What is it about his policies? They can't really come up with anything except for a lot of the lies and mistruths that they're hearing from the fake news.
Well, you know, Dr. Gorka he did a real couple of beatdowns last week, and he's referring this now as to the fake news industrial complex, and the media is the opposition party. And I'm thinking about this, and to what extent, because it's 24/7. They're not covering Ukraine interference in our election. They're not covering Uranium One and the quid pro quo and the pay to play. They're not covering the phony Russian dossier to influence our election, Fusion GPS supporting. Is this people that are motivated and indoctrinated by these 24/7 one-note Charlie establishment media people, the sheep in the media?
Well, certainly some of them are, Sean. Some of them are professional protesters. You know, we know that the left has had these armies of cretins that have come out to protest anything a Republican president has done, going all the way back to Richard Nixon, Ronald Reagan, George W. Bush. So that element of it is not new. What is new, I think, is the level of intensity and activism against this particular president by the mainstream media, as well as some of these protesters that you're seeing on the street. They so hate Donald Trump, and they so hate what he represents as something new and different, somebody who's going to come in and smash the existing system and then reform it. I think they see him as a unique kind of threat, and that's why you get the seeping over from the media into the streets, into these kinds of protests.
All right, you know, and I'll say this. If the president gets the items of the agenda that I talked about earlier in the show accomplished, and the Congress finally moves and does their job, all this noise won't mean a thing if people are back to work, out of poverty, and off of food stamps and buying homes. It won't matter.
That is exactly right, Sean. He needs to do one thing, and he needs the help of the Congress to do it, and that is deliver a booming economy. If he can do that, it forgives all else. Just ask Bill Clinton. He had the same kind of situation, a booming economy in the 90s, and guess what? He survived.
And build the wall and keep your promises. Congress,
exactly.
Roll your sleeves up. Get your job done.
That's right.
All right, Monica, thank you. And coming up next on this busy breaking news night tonight here on Hannity.
Many of our GOP leaders rode into office on Trump's coattails, so it's time they get to work and put America and Americans first.
Political commentator Tomi Lahren, she gets the final word every night this week, and tonight she's going to take on the D.C. establishment, and we'll find out what she has to say. That and more straight ahead. And welcome back to Hannity. All this week, our friend, conservative political commentator Tomi Lahren is going to have the final word on the program. And here's Tomi tonight.
Hey, Sean, my final word tonight is this. Let's make the GOP work again. And yes, let's absolutely start with the border wall. For every hour our Republican representatives sit around and talk about this, thousands more illegal immigrants and who knows what else pour into our country. Sean, I'm so sick of hearing about the 11 million illegal immigrants living in this country. Priority one has to be to secure the border before 11 million more flood in. We know physical barriers work, and that's why Democrats and even some Republicans don't like them. It's not a money problem or a policy problem, it's a priority problem. Same thing with Obamacare. The mandate from the American people on November 8th was clear. Repeal and replace. Repeal the open-ended entitlement program known as Obamacare, replace it with liberty, and let's figure out some common sense solutions to our healthcare problem. Solutions that don't involve a blank check, by the way. And yes, energy independence is another non-negotiable. God bless this land with abundant natural resources, and to think we aren't taking full advantage of science, technology, and innovation all because some snowflakes want to stage another protest? That's absolutely ludicrous. Energy innovation equals jobs and independence, two things the American people absolutely need. Here's what else we need: middle class and corporate tax cuts. The silent majority has waited long enough for this. Hardworking Americans are sick and tired of working our tails off to fund bloated government. It's about time we give them some relief and the ability to keep more of what they earn. The government pays for nothing. The American taxpayer pays for everything. And it's time to make America open for business again. Many of our GOP leaders rode into office on Trump's coattails, so it's time they get to work and put America and Americans first. That's the final word. Take care, Sean.
All right, Tommy Lahren, great points. And Tommy gets the final word every night this week here on the program. By the way, don't miss Tommy. She will be on the Fox News Specialist this Wednesday at 5 Eastern. Don't miss it right here on the Fox News channel. That's all the time we have left this evening. As always, thank you for being with us. This show, always fair and balanced, especially against all the establishment media. We'll see you back here tomorrow night.